Hey everyone, Chris from Drift Outfitters here, and today I want to show you how to make a dubbing loop. Now, a dubbing loop is a really cool tool that you can use to tie all sorts of flies, but it's especially useful for streamers and wet flies. And anytime you want to create a little bit of extra bulk or extra bugginess, it's actually a great one to use on nymphs too if you want to make like a really buggy dubbing or collar effect on nymph. And all it requires is really nothing more than you use when you're usually dubbing. You know, your thread, a dubbing mix of some kind, maybe some wax to help it along. And what we're going to do is set this up. I've got a salmon hook in the vise here and some 10-aught thread. When practicing this and when using it, generally speaking, heavier threads will be a little bit easier to work with. They'll be more forgiving, have a little bit more strength. However, you can definitely do this with lighter threads too. You just have to be cognizant of the weaker breaking strength of those threads. Now what you want to do when you're creating one of these things is you're just going to draw out some thread and you're going to double it over and create a loop anywhere from about 3 to maybe 4 inches long here. And then you're just going to start wrapping your thread back over top of that doubled up thread here just to cinch it into a loop. Now what I like to do here, just to make sure that the bottom legs of this loop are held in the exact same starting point against the hook, is I'll then twist that loop around my thread a couple of times here, like so, and then put another turn or two of thread over the top, and that just makes sure that this loop is sealing right down. This is 2 strands of thread that I'm holding here in my hand. You can see they're held down right in the same spot. So any materials that we put between these 2 strands of thread are going to be held really nice and tightly between there. There are no gaps. Now, the other thing that you're going to need that you may or may not have already for this is a dubbing twister. This is a very basic designed one, although a very good one from OPST. There are others from Loon, Stonefo, and other companies that work very well too. But it's in essence, in its most basic form, a hook with a little contraption that you can spin on the bottom here. What you're going to do is you're going to put that hook around, or through rather, that loop of thread that you've created, and just let that hang below the thread. And the thread here, your main tying thread, you can just pull that off to the side, set it aside for now. If you have a bobbin cradle, you can use that to help get it out of your way. Now, you will find that it's easier to do these with the help of some dubbing wax. So if we take a little bit of dubbing wax here, we're just going to touch up our thread here, and that'll just give our loop a little bit of grip so that when we feed materials into the loop, they actually stick where we want them. Now you can use, as I say, all sorts of dubbing in these loops, and it's not restricted to just dubbing either. You can put all sorts of different materials into these things, from different sorts of hairs and things like that to fibers off of feathers, to really whatever you want. Synthetics work too. In this case, I am just going to use a pinch of dubbing. This is an STS dubbing, just in some orange so you can see it easily. This is a nice long fiber dubbing. Longer fiber dubbings are easier to use for this, because what you need to be able to do is slide that, opening up the loop here in my left hand, and I'm just sliding that whole pinch of dubbing inside of that loop, and then taking my fingers out of the loop so as to hold the material between those 2 strands of thread. And now I'm just holding the dubbing tool in the background here, pulling taut so that material stays put. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pinch that loop just below where I have the material in there, and I'm going to give my dubbing tool a twist. And give it a really nice hard twist here, pinching that loop so that it doesn't spin up my material right away. Once it's good and twisted, I'm just going to quickly release my grip of this loop and let that spin up. I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a spin in the same direction there. So now I've twisted up those 2 strands of thread, and the process bound all that dubbing inside of those twisted strands and almost made sort of a chenille here. Now when you do this, you'll see how thick this core of the loop has become. It gets very bulky. A lot of those fibers get trapped in there. You don't want to apply it just like that. Instead, we want to try and free up some of those materials. So you can do that a few different ways. You can do that even just with the tips of your scissors. Kind of get in here and try and dig them out. You can use a bodkin and again come in here and try and pick fibers out. The easiest way, I would say, is to use a dubbing brush like one of these with some Velcro on it, and using that you can just run it right over that loop, and those Velcro strands will pick out all of those trapped fibers. And I always like to say to, don't be gentle with this at this stage, and again, within reason. If you're using very light threads on smaller dry flies or nymphs, then it definitely would be prudent to go a little easier on it. But we're using fairly heavy thread here, and a large amount of material. I really want to go at this. You're going to lose some material here into that brush, but you're going to lose that material while fishing anyways. I'd rather know that I'm going to end up with the amount that actually stays put, than to lose it on the water and end up with a different final product than what I thought I was going to get. At this point, we can wrap this on just like we would any other material, any other bit of dubbing. You can wrap the entire loop around the shank using your dubbing tool. You can also use the rotary function of your vise to do this. That can be a good way to do this. And if you want, as you apply it, you can pull these fibers back just like you would a hackle. If you're trying to sort of fold a hackle, it's the same sort of process. You can actually get a really nice sort of streamlined look off of this. You don't have to do that. You can create bulkier effects by skipping that part, but that is a nice way to get a nice streamlined look to it. At this point, we're just going to tie that loop off just as if it was a material. Tie those two doubled up strands of thread, and then we just snip them off. And continue tying like nothing ever happened. That is your dubbing loop, and as you can see, the final product, we can pick this out even a little bit more, but the final product really gives us almost the full length of those fibers, so you get a really long fibered, really buggy dubbing look instead of the usual matted down look that we're used to seeing with traditional dubbings. And that is how you do a dubbing loop.